Well, hello and welcome to the Profit Express. I'm Tim Healy, and I'm inviting you to join me each and every Wednesday so you can be ready, so you can be prepared to win the battle for business. That's right. It's what we do here on the Profit Express. Now, before we jump into it, I want to give a shout out and a thanks to our good friends and sponsors at Corbett Public Relations, where they've been promoting and protecting businesses and brands just like yours for over 30 years. So listen, Bill and his team, they do great work. Visit them at CorbettPR.com. That's CORBETT.PR.com. Welcome aboard, everybody. So my question for you today is, what does it take to be a great leader? Not just a leader, but a great leader. Now, if you're the business owner listening, or if you're a manager or a leader in any organization in any capacity, that's a great question to ask yourself. And I'm sure you're already beginning to formulate the answer. It's like, I'm a manager, I'm a leader, I own my own business. What kind of a leader am I? Well, that's today's question on the Profit Express. And as good as that question is, the guest and the answer he's going to provide is even better, because you are in store for best-selling author and global leadership expert, Chester Elton. He's back on for his third appearance on the show. In the past, we've talked about some of his other books. We talked about how to manage multiple generations in the workforce at the same time. Most recently, we talked about his book, Anxiety at Work, that he co-authored with Adrian Gostick. And it was about the impact of anxiety on performance, of course, and on culture. And I tell you, I had him on the show in 2021 for that interview. I just listened to it recently. And that was a great interview, not because of me, but because of Chester. And if you haven't watched it, go on the Profit Express YouTube channel, subscribe, hit the notification bell, of course, and listen to that interview. Seriously speaking, if you deal with anxiety, if you manage people who deal with anxiety at work, it was just a great conversation on a very important topic. But today, in the question again, what does it take to be a great leader? I want to pick the brain of truly one of, again, he's recognized as a global expert in leadership. I don't get to talk to many people like that. And now I'm sharing him with you today. So it's a great pleasure to have back on the Profit Express, Chester Elton. Chester, how are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great. And thanks for your kind words about our last interview. I always say, without a good interviewer, you can't have a good interviewee. So I want to throw a little credit back to you, Tim.
Well, thank you. I'll certainly take that. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, the statistics, the impact, the data that you shared was really, really good. So not just the interview, but of course the book as well, Anxiety of Work, a great read. So I've teased the audience with what does it take to be a great leader, but I want you to hold your answer to that to the end. I want to keep them. Okay. I want to dangle the carrot, as you can appreciate. So here's a question. Let me start off with this. I always think it's kind of interesting because I look at them as two different roles or two different people, managers and leaders. What percent of managers do you think are actually leaders?
That's a great question, because to me, there's a big difference between, managers and leaders. Managers are really important. They get stuff done, right? Mm-hmm. We give them the quotas, we give them the projects, and they manage the project and they get stuff done. Leaders, to me, really paint the vision. Like, where are we going? How are we going to get there? What is the meaning behind the work? So they're very different. Now, I think your question is an interesting one, because I think many managers, in the absence of a great leader, they take on that role, and they have to then be the manager as well as the leader, right? Because there's a vacuum, and as we know, a vacuum gets filled one way or another. So right. I think the future leaders that are managers understand the difference. And while they're getting things done, they're very focused on not just the what and how, which is managers, right? What and how. They also bring in the why. And I think that's an attribute of leaders that really attract great talent, they get things done, and they're the managers slash leaders that are above the norm. Now, does that resonate with you, Tim?
Well, listen, it certainly does. And I think it's a good definition for the listeners and those viewing, because you know you made it a clear distinction. The manager is rolling up the sleeves, getting the project done, the how-to of it, more or less. Where the big picture, the vision, and the why is where the leader comes into place. But so, because I know one of the things you talk about in the research that you've done, I think you've I don't know how many hundreds of thousands, or I think 1 million different surveys you guys have managed over in your years. How many organizations? Maybe I'm just asking an impossible question, Chester. How empty or no, hold on. You see, I'm creating the question in my head as we go here, Chester, because it's an interesting one. So obviously, there's managers in companies, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent, but leaders in all of the businesses that you've consulted and worked for. How many of them really possess as a percentage? Again, it's probably a hunch answer. How many companies today really have good leaders? That's the question.
Okay, great. And I think your intuitive, thought-provoking question there, as you struggled through there, is that there are many positions within organizations where it's assumed they are leaders because they have the title, right?
Okay.
You think of a vice president, a senior vice president, certainly a CEO. You say, okay, they're leaders. And we make that assumption because of the title. Leadership is not a title. Leadership is not bestowed. Leadership is earned, and leadership is taken. Right. It's really interesting. I got a tip from a great friend of mine. He said, you go into an organization, I grew up in sales like you did, right?
Yeah.
And he says, you want a decision done. He says, never discount the fact that probably one of the most influential leaders in any organization you're going to go to is the gatekeeper for the CEO. It's his assistant. It's his chief of staff, right? And so often you'd say, oh, well, he or she, right, just has the desk. Say, don't kid yourself. That person is one of the great leaders, because without access, you can't get anything done. And it is interesting to me that so many great chief of staffs or chief, senior assistants move with the leader. Now, why do you think that is? Why do you think a great leader moves from one organization to another, takes that person with them? Why do you think that is?
Because, they know the value, and they know the impact that person has on their ability to be, the CEO. I'm imagining.
Well, first and foremost, there's a lot of trust there, right? Like they trust each other.
Yeah.
And they know how each other works. And that CEO, that top leader knows that if he or she's going to let somebody through that door, it's worth his or her time. And so, is that a leadership role? Absolutely, it's a leadership role, right? Because it's discerning what's important to the organization, what's important to that particular leader, right? How is it going to impact? And that chief of staff, he or she is the one that makes that decision. That's leadership. Where are we going to spend our time? Where are we going to spend our capital? And without that leadership in that gatekeeper, you're not going to be nearly as productive. So, but in our heads, do we think of the senior executive staff? Do we think of them as leaders? Often we don't, because of the title, and we're wrong. We're wrong. And that's a classic case of leadership is assumed and leadership is earned, regardless of the title. You know this as well as anybody. You've seen some people with big time titles, right? And they couldn't make a decision to save their lives. Right? They don't even know what they're doing or how they're doing it. They're lucky to get through a day, right? And so again, I think when you think of the term leadership, you think of people that understand the why. They get how to marshal resources. They get how to get things done. And people are gravitate to those leaders, right? As opposed to the leader title that is really a manager that's just kind of muddling through the day. And, who wants to work for who wants to work for that person? Like nobody, right?
Yeah, so uninspiring. It's fun. You asked me the question. Why does a CEO take the assistant with them? And I didn't even think of the word trust. And I feel like an idiot now. And oh God, how did I miss that one? I'm sorry. I apologize. Now, so yeah, I mean, don't let titles fool you. It's
Exactly.
really is how it's earned, which is a great point. Now, I'm a big fan of the books, as I've already shared with the audience. But here's another thing, and actually I want to bring up one of my questions today. For those of you who don't follow Chester on Instagram, follow him. Chester, it's at Chester Elton, right? That's the handle.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm giving you a plug on that because you have a ton, just snippets, tips, interesting little videos. And one of them that you shared that I want to ask you about, again, it's one of the great resources you provide, just the Instagram profile. You talked about what are 5 signs that your manager is toxic. I thought that was a great one. Could you share that with the listeners?
Yeah, I pulled out 5. There's probably 50, right? So I'm not sure I'm going to give you the same 5.
That's okay.
Instagram.
That's okay.
Yeah. First and foremost, they don't have time for you. They're not going to invest time. And then 2, when they do have time for you, they're kind of multitasking and they're blowing you off, right? Number 3 that I always love is that your ideas don't matter. Only their ideas matter. So if you've got a really great idea, the toxic manager's like, slow down, cowboy. I don't think you understand who you're talking to here. I've been doing this for a while now, and I don't know if you noticed, but my office is bigger than yours. And if there's any good ideas, they're going to be coming from me, right?
Right.
And that's the other thing that they don't ever give you credit. Right. They don't ever give you credit for a great idea. All the good ideas tend to get usurped. And then the last one, and this is always near and dear to my heart, they'll never celebrate your success. There's not a lot of celebration going on, right? It's always, what have you done for me lately? And a toxic boss will often pit people against each other. Instead of bringing a team together, they'll pit people against each other. Like, hey, you're not doing as well as Susan. You know that, right? I don't know if we can, if you don't pick it up, I mean, we got 5 salespeople and, you're number 6. That kind of satirical, pitting people against each other. You think of, we're in the playoffs. I'm a big hockey fan. I don't know if you follow sports, the NBA and the NHL.
Sure, we're right in the thick of it.
I know, and it's so much fun because it's so different than the regular season, right? It's so much faster. Every game is so much more important. And you look at the teams that succeed, and they are teams, right? Yeah. I mean, they've got a great goaltender. Their defense. I grew up in Vancouver, Canada, the Vancouver Canucks. Now, I live in Jersey, but lived here for over 35 years. So I'm a Devils fan because the Canucks game started at 10 o'clock at night, and there's no way you're going to watch a game that starts at 10 p.m. Right. My point is we missed the playoffs this year. So I'm being given permission by my Devils buddies to cheer for the Canucks that are still in it. At the end of Game 7 in the first round, it was 6-on-4. Now, these guys were throwing themselves, like literally launching themselves in front of the goal to stop any possible shot. And they win the game 1-0. That was a team. Yeah, the goalie was great, right? I shut out. It doesn't get any better. You can't score, you can't win. Right. But the point is it wasn't just the goalie. It was the defenseman. It was the fans. It was everything you can imagine. It all came together. And when they won, as exhausted as they were, they piled on, they celebrate, the sticks and gloves are flying all over the place. And see, that's a team. So who is the leader on that team? Clearly, it's the team manager, right? The coach. Right. Yeah. But the reason that they're all there is because that coach made sure that we celebrated every little thing along the way. And this is the point I want to make. You want to be a toxic manager, do everything we just talked about. If you don't want to be a toxic manager, start with celebration. It's a tool in most leaders' toolbox that doesn't get enough use, and that is celebrate the little things along the way. I'm going to give you some hockey analogies, and that's how you know I'm Canadian. The point is a penalty kill. you celebrate that. The sticks are pounding, right? You have a good shift, they're pounding a goal. They come along, everybody fist bumps, everybody.
Yeah, yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And in business, we get that celebrations are important, even the little ones, because it builds momentum, right? We don't we do a lot of executive coaching, and I'll get some pushback, and they say, we don't want to coddle our people and celebrate too much. And I say, well, are you a sports fan? And they say, yeah. And I say, well, do you have a kid that plays sports? I go, yeah, my kid plays soccer. I go, great. So do you cheer for your kid? And they go, yeah. I go, like when? And they go, she's just kind of little. I cheer that she gets the cleats on the right feet. I go, exactly. You cheer when they get out of the car. You're cheering the whole time. You don't say, you know what, Susie, I'm going to wait until the end of the game. And if you win, I'll give you an atta-girl, a little high five. No, we cheer through the whole game, right? We build momentum. I'll tell you a quick story. In my town, I live in Summit, New Jersey. Lacrosse is king, and they start them in preschool.
Yeah,
and I travel a lot. My youngest son, Garrett, he was starting to play lacrosse. And I'm calling in at the end of the day. And, hey, buddy, you had a game today. How'd it go? He goes, we won. I go, awesome. Did you score a goal? He goes, no. I said, well, did you, pass the ball to somebody scored a goal? Like, did you get an assist? And he goes,
yeah.
No. I said, okay, buddy, did you touch the ball? And he goes, 3 times. I go, that's my boy.
Man, I can so relate as you telling that, because I got a son who's in high school baseball right now, and he's a relief pitcher. So if he doesn't get in that particular game, he's so downtrodden. But that's a great story.
Yeah.
Let me get back to this though, Chester, because you said, hey, what are some of those key traits that make a manager toxic? And one thing you're saying, and you related to sports and to our own kids in sports, managers don't give enough credit. Now, I'm going to ask what might seem like a dumb question. How important is it for the employee to be recognized?
Yeah, listen, it's critical. We look at all the data that we've got, right? And along with anxiety, right? One of the things that lowers anxiety and ups engagement is my voice is heard, my opinion matters. There's no better way to let an employee know that their voice is heard and their opinion matters, that you celebrate their success. We talk about an all-in culture, and the definition that we've come up with that I really like is that I believe what I do matters and I make a difference. Okay, I believe that what I do is every day I make a difference, right? And then when I make a difference, somebody notices it and celebrates it. Now think about that. So I'm working really hard. I do a good job with a customer or a client. I solve a problem, and my manager comes over and says, "Hey, saw what you did there. That was a difficult call. I love the way you calmed everything down. You walked through our processes and procedures, and you took care of it." That will be a customer for life. When I think of great customer service, I'm thinking of you. Are you kidding? That doesn't cost you anything. I was seen, I was heard, I was celebrated. I was seen, I was heard, I was celebrated. It doesn't get any better than that. Now, particularly, and we've noticed a generational difference. I'm the tail end of the baby boomers, and we tend to be a little cynical. They call it work for a reason. I get to work.
Yeah.
But the point is, though, is that the generations that are coming in, they grew up in a digital world. You get 100 positive affirmations a minute playing Mario Brothers, right? You play Plants vs. Zombies. Are you kidding? It's like you get 10,000 positive affirmations in a minute.
Right.
So it's not that we're coddling them. It's just that they've grown up in a more stimulated environment. And so you got to make sure that you're encouraging that stimulation. I'm seen, I'm heard, I'm celebrated. And by the way, it doesn't have to be a brass band or a trip to Hawaii or a red carpet. It just has to be that, saw what you did there. Keep that up.
So
Does that make sense?
It's more, to me, what would resonate with me is not so much the gesture of the recognition, but more the consistency of the recognition.
The discipline,
Right.
That is so insightful, Tim, because it's a leadership behavior that's like any other leadership behavior. It gets better with practice, and it gets better
Mm-hmm.
with discipline. For
Mm-hmm.
example, we've got a wonderful client. They have optometrist stores all over, right? They've implemented what they call 10 and 10. So they start the day with 10 minutes of welcoming and celebration.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, 10 minutes of thank you for coming in and putting in a hard day's work and celebration. And it's not just the manager. They go around and say, hey, who saw something great today? Who's got a great customer service story? Because you see, as the leader, you're not going to see everything that's going on,
Of
particularly in
course.
retail, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you get the team involved in the celebration. 10 and 10. We had a great hospital we worked with down in Dallas, Texas. It was a church-run, a faith-based hospital,
Mm-hmm.
Methodist hospital, and they had what they called the Sacred 60. Now, listen to this. I love these guys. They would take each of their leaders and their managers, and they'd say, for 60 minutes every day, you're going to leave your office. You're going to leave your phone in your office. You're going to shut down your laptop. And we want you to make the rounds. And we want to talk to your team and talk to your people about everything and anything. You're going to talk about how their day's going. You're going to talk about maybe they need some more resources, or maybe they need some more training. Or you're going to ask about, that their mom hasn't been doing very well, or if they got a kid out at school. And they call it the Sacred 60, 60 minutes a day to connect with your people. Now, the guy that put this together is now a professor at university. We'll call him Britt Barrett because that's his name. He's wonderful, and he says, look, when I took over that hospital, their engagement scores were like 15, 20%. When he left, and by the way, in the first year, he got it up to over 90 in 1 year. That's a remarkable turnaround for a hospital that's really big.
Yeah.
I said, how did you do it? He says, I implemented this Sacred 60, and we talked about it, and we held each other accountable. You're going to do a lot of things every day, and you're going to have a checklist. Make sure that one of the check boxes is that you took 60 minutes, your Sacred 60. He said it changed everything because our leaders and our managers were visible, and our employees were seen and heard and celebrated. Great example of a case study that just worked beautifully.
As I am hearing you, okay, I'm just thinking of examples of whether it's family or friends or other people that I know who work at companies, and I don't want to be negative, but I hear what you've just described, Chester. At the optometrist, at the hospital, and having the 10 and 10, the Sacred 60, and how it makes such a transformative difference. And then I hear stories of, and I can't even mention names, of bosses and companies that suck. And I'm like, it doesn't have to be. And that's why I love what you share. Because I'm just personally a big fan, as you can tell. And it's just such a shame because, and I'm not minimizing the work that you do, because a lot of the techniques or strategies, it's not that they're complicated or that they take too much time or that they cost too much money. It's just doing them.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting, my wife, we're going to celebrate 41 years this year, by the way. I say it's 41 years of marital bliss. I think she thinks it's more like 33, 34. Some gaps in it.
Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. She'll say, it is amazing that what you teach is so simple, and yet so many people don't do it. And the upside is it guarantees me employment because there's always somebody that needs the advice. The downside is to your point and there are so many great examples of leaders that do this, right? That are so good at it and get extraordinary results. It's amazing to me that they don't have more followers, that they don't have more people that say, I want to be like that guy, right? I want to be like her. Right. We had a wonderful leader that we studied, Nabila El Sayed. She was the chief operating officer for Walmart Canada, 500,000 employees.
Oh my gosh.
And this is one of the attributes of great leaders that we need to focus on now more than ever. She would introduce herself at town halls as a recovering workaholic. And she would say, look, I've worked on some of the biggest brands, Starbucks and Lego and on and on. And I was a workaholic and I was a perfectionist and I never missed a deadline and I never disappointed anybody. And I didn't sleep and I didn't eat and I had broken relationships. It cost me my health. It cost me my marriage.
Right.
I don't want that to happen to you. She gave her people permission to say, look, if I'm getting burned out, take the time off. Well, it was really interesting because in this one town hall meeting, she's telling me this story. She said, I was taking questions and one of the employees said, well, Nabila, easy for you to say that now. You're the chief operating officer for Walmart Canada. Would you have gotten where you are today had you not made those sacrifices? Great
Okay.
question, right?
Yeah,
Her answer,
absolutely.
her answer was even better. She said, yes, I would have gotten here. It would have taken me longer. And knowing what I know now, I would make that trade. Take care of yourself. Slow down. You're going to live a long time. Enjoy the journey. Don't burn yourself out along the way. Because when it's all said and done, as the great Stephen Covey would say, what do you want people to say at your funeral? What do you want to put on your tombstone? Man, that guy could sell. Man, could she close a deal? No, you want to put great friend, great mother, great father, great parent, right?
Yeah.
Made a difference. Somebody that cared. And this is my long way of getting to leadership attributes and characteristics that are now not nice to haves, but absolute must haves. Is
Okay.
your people have to know that you care about them, not just as worker bees. You care about them as people,
Yeah.
as parents, as partners,
Right.
right? And Nabila, displayed that in a wonderfully vulnerable way. And do you think then it made safe for people to say, hey, you know what? I'm burned out. Can I get a mental health day? And she'd say, absolutely. No judgment, no stigma,
Yeah.
no retribution. Take care of yourself. If you broke your leg, we'd say take care of it. You're exhausted.
Yeah.
Take some time. Come back better than ever. It's lovely.
And listen, if you can accomplish that in an organization the size of Walmart, where she's managing over 500,000 people, I mean, it's evidence that it could happen anywhere, big or small.
Yeah, and see in the big organizations when you get it right, I'll tell you another great culture that we've done a lot of work with, who's got that culture is American Express. You wouldn't think that.
Really?
We always think of financial organizations as being kill or be killed kind of thing. Ken Chenault retired a few years ago. We interviewed him for our book Leading with Gratitude, and he said, "Don't be stingy with gratitude." And by the way, because you give a lot of gratitude and recognition and celebration, doesn't mean you're soft. Nobody was more demanding than Ken Chenault, and yet people loved working for him because when you put in that hard day's work, when you made the impossible happen, he was the first one to give you a call and say, "Man, saw what you did there, awesome," right? You can be demanding and you can celebrate. And when you do it in big companies and you get that great reputation, perfect. Smaller businesses, even more important because you can't afford the attrition. You can't afford to lose that one good person, right? And so the smaller you get, the more important it becomes because you get somebody good, you really want to keep them. And there's no better way than celebrating them as people, as workers, and their success. It's an easy formula.
So, man, I thought our last interview was good. I think this one's topping it so far. I mean, no pressure, Chester. So, all right, another thing that I saw recently in a video, I don't know whether it was on Instagram, YouTube of yours, but you said it, and this really caught my attention. To be aware of the impact of working for a toxic manager, and I think if I'm quoting you right, you said basically if you're working for somebody who's toxic and a toxic manager, and you just define what that person would look like, I think you said quit immediately.
Yes.
What is that impact? Share that one.
Well, here's the thing, and I think it works both ways. And I will share a personal experience with you. I had what I considered my dream job, and I was doing all kinds of interesting things. We were writing, we were speaking, and so on. And we had a leader that believed in us, right? And then he retired. Which is no problem. You always have succession of leaders, right? And a new leader came in. By the way, great guy. And the company under his leadership has done very well. The thing is we didn't connect. I don't think he really got what we did, and I don't think I really knew how to make him happy. Like, what was
Okay.
success in his? And it became toxic in the sense so we talk about toxic leaders like bad leaders, but you can have really good leaders where you have a toxic relationship just because you don't fit, and that's okay, right?
Yeah.
New leaders come in, and we see this in sports, right? New leader comes in, wants his or her people. It's fine. And so I would try again and again and again to deliver what I thought was great value. And it was really interesting when you are in a toxic relationship like that, whether it's contrived or just a matter of a bad fit. It impacts your health. It impacts your sleep. It impacts your personal relationships. It got to the point where my wife pulled me aside and said, "Let's go for a walk." And I said, "Oh, okay." I knew something was up. And she said to me, said, "Look, you've got to quit." And I said, "Honey, I've invested, years and years and years to
Yeah.
get where I am in this company." She goes, "And you love the company." And then listen to this. She said, "You love the company and you bleed the company and you would
Hmm.
give anything for the company. You love the company, but a company can't love you back. You have to have the leaders that believe in you and support you. And it's not there." And then she said, "You're going to quit your job. And I don't care what we do, but we're not doing this." And then she said,
Wow.
"Because I want my husband back. You're this fun, engaging guy that people love to be around." And
Yeah.
she even pulled me aside one time and she said, "Chess, you got to stop yelling in the shower. Have you ever done that? The conversations that you wish you'd had." And you again, she goes, "You're yelling in the shower and you're freaking out our kids. Like our kids think you're a lunatic." And because you are. So the ripple effect of a toxic relationship, quit right away before you damage your personal relationships, before you damage your health, before you start to doubt your own ability and your own capabilities. Because I guarantee you, it will happen. It will. It's unavoidable.
Wow.
And by the way, I was miserable and I was making my boss miserable. He didn't
Wow.
like, I was a jerk. I was a jerk. And so he was miserable. I was miserable. He was talented. I felt like I was really talented. It was a bad fit. The best thing that happened for both of us was I quit.
What an awesome story. Wow. So it was, and your wife was the catalyst for making all of that happen.
Yeah, listen, my dad would always say, my dad loved my wife, and
Yeah.
he said, Chis, you and I have one thing in common. We both married well above our station.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
says, you want to have a great life, marry above your station, and I did that in spades. And if you don't have that, marriage or
Yeah. Yeah.
partner or
Yeah.
whatever, who's your confidant? Who's somebody that you can go to and say, "Hey, you gotta, tell me straight. What should I do? I'm miserable. I'm making my," and if you've got a good coach
Mm,
or a confidant or a mentor or
mhm.
a teacher, they'll pull you aside and say, "This isn't who you are. Find another job and find it as fast as you can because this
Right.
job is killing you." And by the way, studies have shown, and I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but a toxic work environment does take years off your life. It does. How can it not?
Yeah.
The
Yeah. Yeah.
stress, the angst, the worry, you're not eating well, you're not exercising, you're not sleeping. Yeah, get out and get out now.
It's funny. It's just the price is too high of a price to pay. I mean, that's the bottom line. Yeah, when you said that, when I was watching that video, I'm like, whoa, that's a pretty strong statement. I'm like, he's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
quit immediately. I'm like, wow, okay, Chester's serious. Okay. Um, wow. So, today was about, you know, what does it take to be a great leader? And, I kind of set up the show that way. And there's so many organizations. Like you said, there's a lot of great examples, and you've shared them with us. And those are the ones that inspire to say, yes, it can be done. There's great examples. And you share in your books and everything that you guys do how to do it, the strategy behind it. So there's definitely, real reason to be hopeful. But unfortunately, there's a lot of bad examples out there too. I mean, it's human nature, right? So what do we leave the listener with today? The person who's watching on YouTube, who is in a role of maybe they are a manager and they realize they're not a great leader, and they genuinely want to get better. So, from one of the best resources global leadership expert, Chester Elton. I'm laying it on you.
Yeah.
What do we leave them with to say, hey, these are the steps you take on the journey to becoming a great leader?
I'm going to give you two things. And
Okay.
if you are an aspiring great leader, if you are a manager that wants better results, I'm going to give you two things to do. And these are often considered soft skills. They're not, they're hard skills.
Mm-hmm.
They're sometimes considered nice to haves, not must haves. They are absolute must haves and they're absolute hard skills. I want you to go through your team and I want you to ask yourself, do you know the answer to these four questions? What I'm saying is, do you know your people? And to know your people, you need to know the answer to these four questions. Where did they come from? How did they get here? What do they want to accomplish while they're here? And where do they want to go from here? Where did they come from? How did they get here? What do they want to accomplish, and where do they want to go? If you know the answer to those questions, you'll learn about maybe their heritage. Their parents were immigrants, right?
Mm-hmm.
They came from a tough family situation, right? They got here on a recommendation from a friend because they heard it was a great place. How many jobs are filled on a recommendation from a friend? Over 80%, by the way. I know the answer to that question. So it's kind of interesting. And then if you know what they want to accomplish, you can put them in a situation to succeed. And then what are their dreams and aspirations? See, great leaders help their people realize their dreams, whether they stay with you or not.
Mm-hmm.
So if you know the answer to those four questions, I'm telling you, and you know your team, asking those questions, they know you care. And you should share your answers. Here's how I got here. Here's where I came from. Here's what I want to accomplish. Here's where I want to go. And help each other realize those goals and those aspirations. The second one is never underestimate the power of a random act of kindness. Now, we studied a guy named Chris Hadfield up in the International Space Station. Most productive 3 months ever. Had 3 cosmonauts, 2 astronauts, and he was the commander. And he said the reason we were so productive is every astronaut had to perform a random act of kindness for every other astronaut every day.
Really?
Think about that. And I asked him, we were at a conference up in southern Alberta. I said, Chris, why was that the differentiator? He said, because it's the message. The message is, you're on my team. I care about you. I'm cheering for you. I love you. And he said, because of those random acts of kindness, no one ever lost their temper. We never had heated arguments. It was all about supporting each other and getting the job done. So, know your team, 4 questions, random acts of kindness, develop that culture so that people know you're cheering for it. And the bonus one is when your team gets burned out and they finally come to you and they open up, don't solve their problems. Just listen. You don't have to have the answers to everything. Just listen. Empathy is one of the great leadership characteristics of great leaders right now. And a dear friend of mine who maybe you've studied, I'm so lucky to have him in my life, Marshall Goldsmith, the great book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. Yep. He called me up and he said, you know what, Chester, we can't solve the world's problems, but we can give people a good minute. And great leaders give a good minute. Whether that minute is just listening, it's caring, it's a random act of kindness. Because if you give me a good minute, sometimes that's all I need to keep going for the day. And if it's 2 minutes or 3 minutes, take the win. Know your people, be kind, random acts of kindness, and create a good minute. You do those things, trust me, you're on the road to become not just a good leader, a great leader. I promise.
Well, when you said that about, don't solve the problem, just listen. Man, my wife popped into my head on that one because I immediately want to go in to try and help her solve that. And she, not too long, Chester, I swear, like 2 weeks ago, I forget the topic. She's like, God, I just wanted you to listen. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. That is awesome. All right. So before just a curious question, because I am a fan of your books. I don't know if there's anything you can share. Is there a book in the works, or here's the question. What would be a book that you've been thinking of writing but haven't written yet? Anything like that?
That is a great question. Yeah. First, I'm going to give a little plug for our latest little book. It was self-published. It's called The Gratitude Habit. It's a journal. of how you start the day with gratitude and end the day with gratitude. I love leaders that say, the way I stay healthy and engaged is I move, I meditate, and I journal. Move, meditate, journal. I love that triumvirate. The book that I would love to write is a great question. There are two that comes to mind, but I'm going to go with this one. A coaching culture. And here's why, Tim. You think of the people that impacted your life in dramatic ways over and above your family. Granted, that's going to be the biggest influence, right? Your mom, your dad, your grandma, whatever. You think about the people that really impacted you. I guarantee you will reflect on a teacher that believed in you, a coach that pushed you, a mentor that took you under his or her wing and saw something in you that you didn't see in yourself. I had a very dear friend of mine pass away unexpectedly last year.
Oh, sorry.
And I was invited to this, and just a great guy. I mean, seriously, just a delight. Stupid thing, you never know, right?
Yeah.
They asked me to speak at his funeral. I was honored to do it. Hundreds of people showed up. They didn't talk about that he was a tremendous business success, which he was. That he built this beautiful house down by Atlantic City, which it's incredible. They talked about he was my teacher, he was my mentor, he was my coach, he was my friend. So as a leader, if you want to be remembered, teach. If you want to develop people and have that ripple effect, long-lasting, coach, mentor. And if we could get more leaders coaching, teaching, and mentoring, I think the ripple effect through organizations, through communities, through relationships would be tremendous. That's a book I'd like to write.
Wow. Okay. I cannot wait for that one to come. And now you got to write it. That sounds like a great premise for a book. That is really, really awesome. So you heard it here. Breaking news on the Prophet Express. Chester Elton's next book. Listen, I am grateful for your time and your knowledge and your wisdom that you share with the audience. I'm very thankful. You've been gracious enough to say yes to a third interview. This has been great. Chester, thank you.
Well, thanks. And people are always saying, where can we get stuff? And you've mentioned Instagram, and we have a great following on LinkedIn. We've got a gratitude journal on LinkedIn. You can sign up. It's free. We have 312,000 subscribers, so feel free to do that. We have a wonderful podcast, Anxiety at Work. Sign up for that. We've got wonderful resources. And I'm going to do one last plug. I know we're out of time.
No, absolutely,
but
of course.
There's a new platform that I'm very excited about. We've had paper books for forever, digital books with Kindle, Audible, which I'm a huge fan of, headquartered in my home state of Newark, New Jersey. There's a new platform called Lit Video Books, LIT Video Books. They took our book, Anxiety at Work, 200 pages, and they condensed it down to a 29-minute short movie with all the key elements. I'm telling you. Yeah, and I think if you sign up, they'll give you like 2 or 3 days free. There's I think 50 plus business books on there. We always say, I wish I could read more. I wish I had the time. 29 minutes, you doom scroll for 29 minutes before you get out of bed. You know what I mean? So treat yourself. There's wonderful books in there. There's Liz Weissman's book, accelerators. There's Marshall's book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. There's our book. Actually, Liz Weissman's book is Multipliers. I got that wrong. Anyway, go on, sign up, treat yourself to a couple of 3 days. Lit Video Books. Our book is on there. We're proud to be one of the first books that they put on there. And feed your brain. Be curious. Feed your brain. Good leaders do that. I know you do it. I try to do it as much as I can. Lit Video Book will help you do that.
200-page book, Anxiety at Work, down into 29-minute video. That's an awesome idea. That is awesome.
It's an awesome idea.
Chester, thanks again. Great interview.
You can hear I'm at the airport.
I know. Look, you get off a plane, you find a little quiet area. It was great until the very end, so it was perfect timing. Chester, thank you so much for being on board today.
You got it. Thanks, my friend. Call anytime.
You got it.
This was a delight. Cheers.
My pleasure. And this is the Prophet Express. I'm Tim Healy. We just had another great interview with Chester Elton, best-selling author, global expert on the topic of leadership, one of my personal favorites on the topic. This is going to be a must-listen to, watch. So if you're following us, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on YouTube. And just a plethora of Chester's the kind of guy who just is oozing great wisdom and knowledge and information. So follow the guy if you're not already. If you own your own business, if you're in the management or leadership capacity, great resource. So I thank you for your time jumping on board the Profit Express, because, hey, what we do here each and every Wednesday is to get you ready, to get you prepared to win that battle for business. Until next time.